In the recent months of lockdown, one of the things we worked on was ensuring that when the time is right and safe, we can open Salisbury Arts Centre with an exciting exhibition. Allow me to welcome you to Wiltshire Creative Summer Open 2020. My name is Mirka Golden-Hann and I am resident artist and head of visual arts. After many months of lockdown and some truly difficult times, I'm thrilled to be able to present to you this Wiltshire Creative Summer Open exhibition. It is held at Salisbury Arts Centre, Bedwin Street, Salisbury. It is an exhibition which platforms the work of artists based in Wiltshire and adjoining counties. The exhibition consists of more than 80 pieces selected from over 280 submitted works. You can see here painting, drawing, textiles, photography, glass, ceramics, wood, mixed media, and much more. This online viewing of the exhibition was created in place of a private view event. Ordinarily, our exhibition openings would be buzzing with people engaging in excited chat and debate, but for now the reality is different, and so we react by arousing the excitement associated with our exhibition in other ways. And I would like to thank you all for watching and supporting this work. I would also like to say thank you to the participating artists and thank you to the amazing Wiltshire Creative team. Open exhibitions are the result of time taken by a panel of selectors who carefully consider and decide which artwork will end up in the final lineup and which doesn't. I am really pleased to say that I've been joined with the three panelists who worked really hard on selecting our Summer Open Exhibition 2020. And the panelists are Pauline Scott-Garrett. Pauline is a Wiltshire Creative board member. Pauline is also an artist and visual arts champion. And our next panelist is Katie Akril. Katie is an art historian. She is also a curator and she is head of visual arts at Pound Art Corsham. And we are also joined by Martin Memory. And Martin is Salisbury Gallery owner. Martin is also an artist and an optometrist. And Martin tells us that he's got everything to do with light. Martin is also a sponsor of this year's Public Vote Prize. And this year's Public Vote Prize, it's called the Memory Fine Arts Prize. So let me ask you all one by one a question. Which piece of art had particularly stayed with you since the time of the selection? And I will ask Pauline first.
Thank you, Mirka. The piece that stayed with me was by an artist called Prudence Maltby. She's a Salisbury-based artist, and the title of the piece is Collage, Collage 1, and it's a dry point copper etching with collage on top of it, and it's not particularly large. It's about 40 by 50 centimetres, so about this size. And it's very, very beautifully presented. It's sort of tiny, very delicate and sort of illusory somehow. And with that mystery really sort of drew me in. I could see curious sort of references to things, little glimpses of things, and I definitely wanted to know more. So I started to look deeper into the work, and I could see some references to possibly other cultures, maybe history, struggles, even war. There was a little symbol of war in there. And as I started to look at those references and they started to make emotional connections with me, I felt my interest rising. I felt my heartbeat rising, actually, and my heart starting to beat faster. And it's always a sign of a powerful piece for me. So I returned to the piece and thought about it again. And it's talk about its actual materiality, how it was made. It was created by a dry point etching using a copper plate, which is essentially a print using an etching press, and then collaged on top, so layers built up to create this illusion of depth and insight. And the etching as a background gave it a sort of grounding, a setting, if you like. And I started to look deeper into the little symbols and references in the piece of work. And they started to provoke a sense of kind of a fear, almost, of alarm. There was an all-seeing eye, which seemed very profound, and an all-hearing ear. So very eclectic, but yes, a sense of alarm at what this piece was all about. But I sort of soothed and comforted myself by noticing the kind of beautiful little components, little delicate details of patterns, the sort of decorative nature. It's this great sense of design and solidity. There's a lovely diagonal floor with beautiful black and white squares. And as I looked deeper and deeper into the piece, I started to sense a kind of autobiographical note. Somebody peeking through a window, and then I saw the girl. Who is that girl? It had a nursery rhyme quality almost. And then I noticed a mask, and that was probably the thing that helped unpack the whole piece for me, because I realized it's a sort of, the piece is about masquerade, it's about a facade, a veneer, it's about concealing and revealing. And it's funny too. I've made it sound quite deep, but actually it's very funny. There's little kind of moments of humour, and it's very, very personal, a real sort of personal revelation, if you like, very subtle, nuanced, yet hugely powerful. So without a doubt, I felt profoundly connected with this piece, and felt that it was something that I really did want people to see, to read, and to feel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pauline. It is. I remember that we, during the selection process, we did talk about the fact that those two pieces selected, they really skirt between kind of dream and a night terror almost, and they kind of are interweaving those two, and you never know quite in which state you are. It is very intriguing.
Very beguiling.
Yes, yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you, Pauline. Katie, which piece struck in your memory?
Thank you so much, Mirka, and thank you, Pauline. That was so fascinating to hear. The piece that I've chosen, well, the two pieces that I've chosen are by Kisa Vanderswan, and I've chosen them both because we selected them both, and they're really lovely kind of pairing together. They're called We Are Each Other and Come Together, and they're two gorgeous small paintings. But yeah, I chose to talk about these two pieces because I just had quite a kind of strong immediate reaction or response to these. I kind of loved the messages that the artist is kind of putting out there through these pieces. We are each other and come together, and I think that they're lovely messages to put out at the best of times, but I think particularly right now, I just thought, well, what great messages to put out there. I think, you know, we're all living in these very difficult and anxious times, and we're trying very hard to support one another, but at the same time feeling quite isolated and confused. So I think it's great to be putting those very simple but very powerful messages out there. So for me, that was just great to see, and it made me feel quite happy. It made me smile. And I think also the kind of art historian in me really responded to these pieces. As Mirka mentioned at the beginning, my background's in art history, and I teach art history leisure courses, and it's really my great passion. It's what I'm always coming back to and always talking about and thinking about. So I think what I kind of loved about these pieces is they seem to be informed by this kind of Byzantine visual language. And I love that, and I love these kind of saint-like figures with their kind of flat halos and their tablets with the messages that they're kind of gesturing to, pointing to. And I love the way it's kind of informed by the simplicity and directness of Byzantine art. I think it's quite powerful in its directness, and I think that really helps to put those messages across. I think that was an interesting visual language to use for the kind of messages that Kisa is putting across. And I also felt that another thing that I loved, it's not trying to quite copy Byzantine art, but he's kind of got his own thing going on. It's quite playful, they're quite quirky. They're kind of responding to it, but they're not copying it. They've got that kind of dignified, simple thing going on, but there's also they're in a different direction, and I think that playfulness kind of really can appeal to an audience of today. So there's that really interesting push and pull that I really like about them, and the more I look at them, the more I go back to them, I just think, wow, what beautiful, jewel-like, lovely, happy pieces. And I think also it's something that I can't remember if we talked about this when we were selecting, or whether, I know Mirka and me talked about it a little bit afterward, were his kind of belief that everyone should own art. And I love that, and that he reflects that in his pricing for his artwork. And I think that's a nice, even though that's kind of not why I chose to talk about them today, I love that kind of, as I say, it's the style, and it's the messages that they're kind of giving across. But I just wanted to end by mentioning that kind of lovely ethos that he creates by and works by, and that it's all about kind of getting art to people and getting art into their homes. And I think that's just a lovely thing. So yeah, yes, that's why I've chosen those two pieces to talk about.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, there is some sort of comfort within them, and friendliness, and I think that's why we were all attracted to the work. And I did do a bit of digging since about Kisa, and I found out, I hope he will not mind me saying this, that he was actually expelled from art school when he was a young man, and then he went on to live his life and returned back to art fairly recently. And never looked back since. And you know, I really find that story also very encouraging. Yes.
Yes, sort of a rebel artist.
Yes. Oh, thank you. And I will ask Martin Memory next, which piece of art or which artist had stayed with you since the selection.
Thank you, Mirka. I would say I think I agree with Katie that it's great that art is there for everyone to be part of, and I think it should be a very inclusive group for everyone to be involved with. The artist that struck me particularly was Sofia Sample and her submissions. Her work, for me, it strikes me as being very precise, very well constructed, and very well thought through. There's clearly a narrative within Sofia's work, And I guess that's probably not surprising, given that her painting process and her philosophy on her work is based around our experience of events, significant events, historical and also contemporary. I also find her work very engaging. It's quite easy to, from a visual perspective, to become engaged with. It's in that sense, it's easy on the eye. It's very seductive in that sense. So it draws you in and allows you to get involved with the work and to start to ask questions of it. But I also think the work asks questions of you as well, as a viewer. I think the answers to the questions we might ask are not always easy to find. And also I think the answers probably when we get them aren't that easy to accept either. I think looking at these two submissions, I think we can say they're fairly ambiguous. They are, after all, paintings of walls with signs on, and there's not a lot of visual clues there about what the narrative is about the work. I think there's intellectual clue from the titles over here. We've got block 2 and block 11. So we're probably not looking at a domestic interior here. These are more likely to be interiors of an institution maybe, and even perhaps of incarceration. So intriguing pieces of work. And there is that narrative, and it's not, I think both the title and the work are ambiguous, so it's not always an easy journey to find out what Sofia is trying to tell us here. So I did take the liberty of speaking to Sofia about her work, and it transpires that what we're looking at here is a small part of a larger body of work that she undertook having visited Auschwitz. Now, of course, I think Sofia's deliberately left out that word Auschwitz from the title, because of course that would propel us very quickly into understanding what the narrative is about the work. And I don't think Sofia intends us to understand the work that easily. I think she wants us to struggle a bit to find out, what that work really means. And that's possibly, I think, a reflection of how difficult it might be for us to really come to terms with those events that happened at that place, at that time. So for me, these are two very powerful pieces of work with a very powerful message. And I think so from a visual point of view and also from an intellectual point of view, they tick those two boxes for me in a very powerful way. And so from that perspective, I think that they're very deserving of being present in this year's open exhibition. So I think that's really what struck me about those pieces of work. And I think they're fantastic.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, I'm very pleased that you picked Sofia Sample to talk about because I have been following Sofia for a few years now and with a great interest in her practice. And I don't know if you remember, last time Sofia had exhibited with us was in the Insatiable Minds exhibition, which was the Festival 2019 exhibition. And it was the kind of the interest in politics and interest in human history and references to creativity and the terror that humans can impose on one another that kind of marries in Sofia's work so very well with such kind of depth of analysis. And yes, you are right. I'm very pleased to have this work in our exhibition. So thank you. In selecting the exhibition, the aim was the widest representation of genre and art forms. We were mindful of presenting work made by artists at any stage of their career. When standing in front of a piece of artwork, you are presented with at least two parallel narratives. The artwork tells the story which the artist wants the observer to witness, and it also offers an insight into the artist's world and into their own experiences. Open exhibitions tend to be eclectic collections of precisely this, a kaleidoscope of creativity which continuously nourishes contemporary culture. Our Summer Open exhibition includes work which narrates, artwork which represents, which looks back at the fun good old days, or which issues a warning. You will see artworks which educate, which will make us inquire, which is personal, and which is universal. Artwork which will invite contemplation, or teleport us into a different place, as well as artwork which might rattle a few cages. Understandably, there are several pieces included in this year's exhibitions which directly feed off the experiences of lockdown. Exhibitions, galleries, and art shows closed their doors, but art did continue to be made. We know that creativity for some was the main coping mechanism to navigate through this very difficult time. Making, painting, creating gave many a tangible reminder that time did not stop, and that this time, when we were not allowed to meet friends and hold loved ones, was not wasted, but it was used to achieve, to learn, and to discover, to get to terms with the unthinkable. As we learn to live and interact differently, creative endeavor continues to offer an escape. And this escape also extends to experiencing the art created by others. As you know, due to the lockdown, it was not possible for us to deliver our Summer Open exhibition within the summer dates. However, the decision to keep the name in spite of the season was taken quite early on, when we started to consider how we re-emerge from the situation. Keeping the name Summer Open felt significant. In the time when life as we knew stopped, hanging on to the promise which every summer brings felt really very important, and so we chose not to change the name. We made this feature to replace our private view event. During a private view, you would of course have had a chance to meet some of the artists and speak to them. And we felt that this particularly is important, and we wanted to make this still possible. Therefore, we got in touch with some of the exhibiting artists so that they can say a few words about their work. During the selection process, it came apparent from very early on that the theme of birds was regularly reoccurring amongst the submissions. Walking through the exhibition, you will notice that we have selected several artworks depicting birds. I think that this is because Paradoxically, the symbolism of a bird encompasses both freedom and sinister premonition. The first artist I am speaking to is Lynn Heaton. Lynn, why is it that the theme of birds so often features in your work?
My artwork holds and explores the elements. That's earth, air, water and fire. And these elements combine to form or create the spirit of life and death, living and dying. My crows, that's why I really like crows, they embody these elements. And my crow is like the spirit. It's made up of all those elements. The crow is empty and full at the same time. And people say it's an omen of change. It's a keeper of sacred law, natural law, and I like that. I really like that. It's the gatekeeper. So my crow symbolises the potential for change. It simultaneously is solid and void or empty. It's a space. My crow is a space in between endings and beginnings. It's that bit just in between those two. Life and death is in the middle of the two. It's like the gateway between the two. And it's the place from which all things are coming and the place from which all things are heading. And in the same way, the blackness of the crow absorbs all the colours of the rainbow, and it also reflects all the colours. So it does both. And it's a natural, earthy magic for me, is the crow.
Thank you, Lynn. It's wonderful because I know your work for so many years, and finally to hear you speak about it this way, it's opening eyes to me as well to see new things in the work that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
My next artist to interview is Clifton Powell. I have been aware of Clifton Powell's work for some years. I distinctly remember seeing his work for the first time. It was so exciting. The work emitted the energy of street art, but at the same time it presented the insight of an investigative lecture. Included in this exhibition is Clifton's painting, The Golden Tribe, and it was the contemplation and the wisdom of the young person in the painting which was noted and discussed to some detail during the selection process. Clifton, please, can you tell us more about this painting and where this piece fits within your artistic practice?
Well, I've been doing black art for a long while because in Jamaica it's mostly black people, and that's what I used to doing, a lot of black people. But my roots is strictly from Africa, so we have similar type of living and similar way of expressing ourselves and enjoying ourselves and play, and the whole thing is similar. So that's what I know. When I came to England, I started doing different pieces, but my true foundational background was really African art. In Jamaica, they used to have a thing called Jankunu, where people dress up in and I suppose it comes from Africa as well. That's where it comes from. People dress up in loads of different costume and painted face and mask and stuff, and go around beating drum, and it was, Jankunu was designed really to scare kids when kids was misbehaving. Every year these people come around and scaring the kids, like, go and touch the feather. No, I don't want to touch the feather, something like that. So it's a natural thing. What I do, the Golden Tribe I think it's experiment. Why I turn a normal paint, a normal face painting in a gold painting. So it was on an experimental stage. Why I bring it there. The expression is an expression coming from my soul, really. And that is the expression of innocence. But the innocence was there. And when I start doing art give you this spiritual awareness that you can, you know, expand on your innocence, and look into things. I want to create, I want to design, I want to work certain things out. So, that piece was me, really. you know
I think we can, yeah, it comes through as such. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it is a really powerful and insightful piece. And I'm, I'm really pleased that we have it in the exhibition. And I'm also pleased to say that Clifton will be exhibiting with us with a much larger selection of works in the following exhibition from our summer open, which is the exhibition Diaspora, which unfortunately was cancelled due to lockdown. But we are producing this exhibition straight after our summer open. So we will see more of Clifton then. Clifton, thank you so much. It's been wonderful, and see you soon.
Thank you very much. Nice speaking to you, Mirka. And I'll see you soon, as you say.
To many of us, not being able to go out and meet friends in the lockdown was a real loss. To eat and drink together and to chat and debate is what we as humans do, irrespective of the culture of our origin. In the exhibition, the painting by Zealink takes us into a Turkish coffee house. Zealink.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Please, can you tell us more about your piece and about your practice?
Yes. Actually, I was always hungry, looking for a secret moment centered around the love and beauty. And my painting, for this painting, my journey, I think it's starting from a cup of Turkish coffee, which I bought a couple of months ago from Istanbul. And I think the aroma of this ancient origin of the coffee frees my mind totally, because I can traveling around culture, people, religion, and time without border. I think I'm quite interested in the people and the things in a space in a way which we don't normally encounter it. However, this is not something about gravity. This is something about imagination and freedom. And color, lines, and something accidentally being made, steered by the rhythmic breathing and the chance of harmony. I think for this painting, the whole process for me is more like a very poetic way. I'm spontaneously on an adventure in order to seeking something unknown but beautiful. And I use the water-based media on handmade paper. This combination for me is a combination of love, because I think the sensitivity in between each other really creates a lot of possibilities and miracles for me. I cannot do wrong, but sometimes I feel very, very exciting because I need to paint without fear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zealink. This is wonderful to hear you speaking about your work this way. I think your work is wonderful and has so much energy in it, and I really hope that perhaps we can work together going forward again in the future.
Thank you very much. Very looking forward to this exhibition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My next artist whom I will be speaking to is Steve Burden. Steve lives in Somerset, but his work is inspired by growing up at Pepys Estate in Deptford, South London. He investigates themes and ideas associated with British housing estate. Steve, I grew up on a communist housing estate, and when I saw your work, I had a strong reaction to it. I'm really very pleased that you agreed to tell us more about it.
Great, thank you. So I grew up on the Pepys Estate, which is a kind of classic post-war brutalist housing estate in London. It's right on the River Thames. I was born in Greenwich, which is to the right of the estate, and went to school in Bermondsey, another famous area in London, which is to the left. So if you was to go down the River Thames towards Westminster, my practice is all really based around the Pepys Estate, and I kind of explore what I call chimneys associated with the estate. So when I started painting the Pepys, the paintings were very autobiographical and based upon my own experiences growing up there. It was a very violent, it was a very rough estate. There were lots of social issues on the estate, all council. Some of the flats, you like my parents paid their rent, but other flats, their rent was paid for by the state, and that came with its own kind of issues. I also look at kind of the architecture. So I look at the architecture of the estate. It's very interesting. As I say, it's built in a brutalist style. At the time when it was built in the 60s, they were the tallest residential towers in London. They're taller than the Barbican came afterwards. And I'm kind of quite interested in the origins of kind of post-war modernism as an architectural style. So I also look at the kind of the history of the estate, so the fabric of the estate. So it's named after Samuel Pepys, who was a great diarist, but actually everyone talks about his diary, but he was actually a very important statesman, and actually kind of run the navy for King Charles II and then subsequently King James I. And the reason the Pepys Estate is called the Pepys Estate is because by the time Samuel Pepys came along, there was a dockyard on the site of the Pepys Estate, which was subsequently bombed during the Second World War. So the history is there, and I consider myself to be a proud Londoner. I'm from London. My parents are from London. My grandparents are from London, and that kind of weaves its way into the work. This particular painting that's been selected for the exhibition really it's quite a political painting. And, normally my kind of paintings that I produce, there's a lot of allegory in the painting. They're about personal memory, they're about personal experiences, and I kind of dovetail in mythology or history, whatever I kind of want really, into the kind of conceptual narrative of the painting. But there's a very strong conceptual narrative in all of the work, at least that's what I want. I don't want anything to be arbitrary, nothing's kind of overly abstracted. There's resonance in all of the work. And with this particular painting, I wanted to talk about the fact that I'm from a working class background.
Thank you, Steve. This is great. I always kind of thought that architecture forms people who live within it.
Yes.
And what you have described, I think it's really true. But could you, just one more question. So when you moved from London to West Country, to Somerset, how did that experience changed you, or did it?
Well, it definitely changed me. But I always said to my partner that I've lived in lots of cities around the world. I've lived in New York. I've lived and worked in New York, London, Lisbon, Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha. I've lived all around the world, and for me, London will always be the governor.
Earlier, I spoke about the personal experience which is present in each artwork, and actually, you have just reminded me of exactly that. Your piece unsettles and presents a challenging experience by pointing a finger at a particular anxiety currently occurring in some areas of the British life. and I have a feeling that your piece in our exhibition will stir up some debate. The last artist I will be speaking to is Salisbury-based Jane Walker. Jane was the winner of the public vote from our last year Summer Open exhibition. Her work also accompanied and illustrated one of our creative inspiration callouts, part of the Wiltshire Creative Connect's online program. Jane is well known for her distinctive depiction of Salisbury. The emphasis in her work is on a particular type of light, the golden hour for the city. And in her paintings of Salisbury, there are no people. As we entered into the lockdown, the city of Salisbury appeared just like one of Jane's paintings. Jane, can you please tell us what inspires you and why you see Salisbury this way?
Well, to be honest, I love architecture, really love architecture, and particularly sort of 19th century and early 20th century sort of industrial architecture, and I love it when it's in really intense light. And that can be sort of really early morning daylight or evening daylight, but I really like it in sort of evening sodium light as well, street lighting. And also when, you know, buildings are just lit up inside by sort of, you know, porch lights or living room lights and things like that. I don't know, but I mean, I dream about things like that as well. I dream about architecture with light on it, and I've always been fascinated by it. I mean, there's no real deliberate reason why I don't put people in. It's just that I'm just interested in architecture with intense light in some way. It just, I don't know, it just makes me feel a certain way, and so I try to put that across in the paintings. And I've only been painting like that for the last several years. I mean, I trained as an illustrator of natural history, and so I was painting exclusively sort of birds, flowers, animals, fish, that kind of thing, mainly birds. And then I didn't paint for years and years and years, became more interested in artists that painted architecture, particularly Edward Hopper and painters like that. And when I started again, I really thought that I would have to go to sort of big industrial cities or London or, you know, places like that. And the more I walked around Salisbury, the more I thought it has a little bit of everything. I've lived here for, well, you know, getting on for 30 years. And I just would walk down streets and think, oh, that looks good, that looks good. And the more I walked around Salisbury, the more I saw that there was a lot to paint here. The city is easy to walk around. It's easy to walk around in the evening. First thing in the morning, it's very compact. But also, you know, and there's lots of pubs on corners and sort of takeaways and lots of sort of edges and corners of buildings that are lit up. And there's loads to paint because I don't paint sort of whole street scenes and vistas of buildings. They're just sometimes just the edge of one building or one house. And actually just outside the city, there's lots of sort of Victorian houses, and I'm very interested at the moment in Wyndham Road, and I'm walking up and down there a lot and working on some paintings of that. And there are some places that I've painted several times. The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is they're removing all of the sodium lights around city centres. And it's sensible to have white street lights. They're safer, they're more practical, but it does take away that mysterious way that streets and cities look at night. So I'll probably be concentrating on a lot more sort of intense daytime scenes. So yeah, so just really buildings with light on them and intense lights is it's the kind of art I love looking at. But yeah, that's what I really love to do.
Thank you, Jane. You are right. I have noticed the gradual change in light in many parts of Salisbury, and you have just reminded me that artists, through their hands and minds, take on the role of documenting the times as it passes. As I mentioned, Jane Walker was the public vote winner last year. This year I'm really pleased to say that we have 2 prizes as part of our Summer Open exhibition. The public vote prize is now the Memory Fine Art Prize and will be announced at the end of the exhibition. We also have the Noble Arts Prize, which is a prize for the under 25s. This prize is sponsored by Sharon Noble and Noble Art Supplies. Thank you all for watching, And before I go, I would like to let you know that the exhibition is held at Salisbury Arts Centre and is open to visit in our opening hours Tuesday to Saturday. You can also book a small group curated visit by getting in touch with us. When you come in, please observe the rules of social distancing and do sit down for a drink and bite to eat to support our friendly cafe. The Summer Open is a selling exhibition, and if you fall in love with a piece, make it yours. By buying artworks, you are not only endorsing the artist's practice, but you are also supporting our organization to carry on with our artistic program. Artists and the whole creative industry took a huge knock in the recent months, and your custom will be appreciated now more than ever before. These difficult days definitely require creative minds. I will finish off by looking at a piece by Alison Carter. This piece lays out in British Sign Language fingerspelling the words "In England's green and pleasant land" from the famous poem by William Blake. I can't help but note that the events from our recent history, Novichok, Brexit, whichever side of the fence you sit on, and COVID-19 rather brings about an association with the dark satanic mills also mentioned in the same poem. What this piece does really very well is reach out, communicate and connect, and that is precisely what art sets out to do. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe, and see you soon.